I was a very young boss, very young boss, a little too young. To be a boss at 23 or something and, overseeing a very large team, many of them who were much older than you, wasn't easy in the early 2000s in India. But so I basically kept everybody under check and took a restaurant from strength to strength. I do have my little Gordon Ramsay side. Fuck. I am a chef. I am allowed to curse. You can do a beep at the end. I grew up in a foodie household, so the smells of food, and it could be just tasting the dal, or it could be tasting the pudis being made fresh, or it could be the dessert that my grandmother would make. I think I grew up in food. I was never a breakfast person even when I was a kid. So I have coffee when I used to go to school, which used to freak my family out. I mean, just after kindergarten. There was this one thing that my mum used to make, who wasn't the greatest cook at that time, she was a working woman, was this pyaz and tomato ki chutney, which she would lather on a toast and give us on Sundays. Which was great. I think it's still one of my go-to dishes. I knew that I loved food. I was also cooking professionally, but I hadn't really decided whether this was a career trajectory that would make sense for me. I come from a very educated family, and the insistence on education was huge. So I decided that I would dabble in both for a while and then see where my heart takes me as I grow older. Even though I was cooking, I was cooking professionally practically at 15, 16. And yeah, I mean, that's really when I took that leap of faith, but after getting an education. I have a trigger memory, and a very clear and distinct one, of why I wanted to go to the school that I went to, which was the Culinary Institute of America in upstate New York. It's after Poughkeepsie in a place called Hyde Park. It's still considered probably the best culinary school in the world. It's like a love child of Harvard and Hogwarts. So I mean, if you walk around there, you see, on a hill, all these guys walking around with white coats and chef caps. On the background of the giant Hudson and this gorgeous old building. But I was, I don't know, browsing through some magazine, and I saw an image of a cake. But it was a giant 3-tiered cake, gorgeous, with a teapot on top of it, with tea falling out of it, splashing into a cup and splashing out. And I looked at that image and I said, if a human being can actually make something edible like that, I mean, that is just the most remarkable skill. And then I read the caption of where it was made, and I said, I want to go there. There was a very few Indians on the New York culinary scene. Of course, Floyd Cardoz was already an established chef at that time. And again, the rare one. The apprenticeships were really interesting. I did it the hard way, which was basically go and stand at the back door on a cold December New York morning, which is very cold, by the way, and wait for somebody to come out and saying, can I please apprentice over here for free? And just looking at me and in the cold and all, they'd probably be sympathetic and saying, okay, fine, come and work for a day and let's see how you are. And if you're good, then we'll maybe consider taking you on for longer. Yeah, and I started making my way and inroads into all these kitchens. Nobody says no to free labor, especially if they're skilled. So that, I think, worked in my benefit, and I was able to get some phenomenal places experientially under my belt. I decided not to take the easy path to a green card and, being that guy who jumped. Essentially, the entire exercise of going and getting a degree abroad was that so that you could settle there somehow. That was never, I think, a driving factor for me. And I think even my exit interview at the CIA, I mean, I said that I want to head back home and be a pioneer as far as I can over there. I'd come back to India, I'd gone and checked out the scene. It was a little depressing. Of course, there were some remarkable people doing some remarkable work, but very few and far between. And so it was a very finite space. I remember one conversation, Ritu Dalmia and I, and she's like, just go back. I mean, there's not very much over here. And just when I was kind of giving up, a college friend of mine, he had a friend whose common friend was AD, and he said, why don't you go and meet AD? And so I walked in, of course, it was December in Delhi, and I was wearing my skinny jeans and big boots and like a long overcoat and a red t-shirt, and I was sitting there, and then AD walked in a little later and kept looking around, must have passed me about 10 times. And then he asked the GRE, like, this guy was supposed to come and meet me. She's like, oh yeah, he's sitting over there and had this big spiky hair. So he's like, wow, that's a chef candidate, obviously. They didn't get chef candidates like that at that time. And he said, I've been mulling opening a restaurant in Bangalore, and you could be somebody who's a great fit for that, so would you consider it? And I did, and that's how I joined. So I adopted this city, and this city adopted me, and I fought for it. And I said, damn you, I will make sure that we're spoken about all the time. And everything I do is going to be to make sure that this city is always considered as one of the, great food cities. And I also hopefully stand vindicated in that, because what we did by opening in 2005 was essentially usher in the confidence in the industry that if they can open there, we can open there. And that's really when the floodgates opened for Bangalore. So I think we really were the change. And the rest, as they say, is history. Cooking is so intuitive, at least for me. I cook by intuition a lot. And I get the boys and girls around me and like, this is how I'm doing it, you figure out the recipe now. So keep taking notes, and then we can standardize it. Because that's how I cook. I can't go, now I'll put 3 grams of this and 1 gram of this. I'll never be able to. I take, okay, here I'm putting this much. I drop it on a weighing scale. Okay, now I add it to the recipe. Let me tell you a little something about my philosophy in general. Is I do not like being siloed. I think it's loathsome. Because I am part of an industry which, by virtue of what it represents, is supposed to be evolutionary. Food is evolutionary. You throw authentic at me, I will slap you in return. There is nothing called authenticity. What are you pegging as authentic? Is authentic generational? Was 3 generations worth of food authentic and then it changed? So when you are in an evolutionary cycle, it's only natural to adapt to what society demands and how times are changing. We as a culture are one of the greatest appropriators of cuisine, and we should be proud of that. We can take Chinese and turn it into something the Chinese don't understand. We can take Italian and turn it into, Ludhianvi, and we love it. The Italians die, of course, when they see it. But the moment somebody does anything to our food, protest kar do, गाड़ियाँ तोड़ दो, हमारा खाना खराब कर दिया, इसका नाम खराब कर दिया. I mean, I don't understand it. We're doing it all the time. It's okay. Other people adapt ours to their tastes as well. And cuisine moves. I mean, curry is practically the national dish of Britain. It tastes nothing like that you had in your grandmother's house. And it's fine, it works for them. But at least they're talking about it. 17 years ago, penne and red sauce was the most selling or demanded dish, and also it had to swim in the sauce. And now, the #1 selling dish is a cacio e pepe, is an aglio olio. So in 17 years, we've already seen a generational shift. So cut everybody some slack and let them play around with stuff. So if modernizing Indian food brings a paradigm shift in the way people approach dining out as well as dining in, why not? You can't have dibs and rights on food. It's everybody's. And if people are getting inspired by something that you have done well, I think that's testament of your success. You should be flattered, not threatened. I've had a few showdowns with journalists also who would tell me molecular gastronomy. I said, look, bloody hell, there is no such term. Correct it. You have picked up some random media created bunch of words and started using it because it's become mainstream. It's modernist cooking or it's molecular techniques. There is no molecular gastronomy. And the molecular gastronomy term was coined for a completely different reason. And there's enough written about it. But you know how sensationalism works. हर चीज़ पे फोम लगा दो, हर चीज़ को कैवियर बना दो, इस पे फिल्म कर दिया, इस पे फिल्म कर दिया. And the people who did it successfully did it so extremely well at such high benchmarks. You know close to it. And let me give you an analogy. An Italian makes a Ferrari, right? A Ferrari is great. अब आप मारुति 800 पे लाल पेंट मार के उस पे एक छोटा घोड़ा लगा दोगे, वो Ferrari नहीं बनती, right? And that's what a lot of the molecular gastronomy in India was. So you've done all these flourishes and completely forgotten what the main dish should be. Standalone restaurants did not attract a lot of talent. Everyone wanted to go to a 5-star hotel. That 5-star hotel is where the futures are. Who goes to a standalone restaurant? And then I suddenly, at the age of 24 or something, was on the cover of a magazine and holding a fish like, something out of Hamlet. And again, this boy-looking guy with a fish there, that inspired a lot of kids. And they must have been 15, 16, 17 and saying, hey, being a chef is not so bad. Being a young boss is interesting. It also comes with a lot of downsides because you start taking on a mantle of things way before you have the requisite experience. And as I grew older and as I grew wiser, hopefully, you do understand retrospectively that it's necessary for leadership not only to have, chutzpah and energy and talent, but it also needs a little measured approach. It also needs a little wisdom, especially if you want it to be a long, meaningful thing. I learned it the hard way, but I learned it nonetheless. So I think retrospectively, I think that's a very good lesson. What stands out about me is that I don't let failures get me down. Yeah, so I did, of course, made lots of mistakes, but I think why my customers love me so much is that I would go out of my way to make sure that the remedial measures that were taken place or the correction that happened for any faux pas was exponentially greater than what they had anticipated. And that's how I've made so many friends over the years. People who came in only for coffee because that's all they could afford. As a startup and are now tech billionaires, it's great to see that journey. And the one thing that's been constant in their lives is that guy is always going to be at that restaurant. And if you want to go and have a quick chat about anything under the sun, he's always available. So I think that actually helped me negate a lot of the screw-ups that I made. Yeah, so one mistake was probably in our first, third, fourth month of the restaurant. And they overcommitted on a giant wedding catering, and we were the cool new place in town. These guys will know what they're doing, but clearly we didn't. And we took on a very large catering event, where the numbers went up exponentially. So there was, of course, some level of mistake on both sides. But I think about 2 hours into the wedding, we ran out of food. So that did not obviously go down very well with that client. But that was huge. I think I was probably hiding under a banquet table at that point of time because I didn't know who was going to come and kill me. There's just no food. I am a person who gets bored very quickly, and I am a person who hates monotony. That's why I read a lot. I just need to keep my mind active all the time, and I need to create something all the time. In my opinion, I think a restaurant's about patrons who want to return, sometimes for the same thing, sometimes to be surprised by something new. I don't necessarily like formulas, and I like breaking away from them in its entirety. I don't really believe in following a set pattern. I know it sounds like I'm tooting my own horn. I'm not. I was way ahead of the curve on many other things. Sous vide cooking, molecular techniques, all of that I was doing in 2005 because that's what I'd learned from New York and I was bringing back to me. The market wasn't ready for it. It's as simple as that. And one of our first reviews, the Times of India reviews used to be really big at that time. And I remember Priya Bala was the food critic and they said, what the hell are you guys doing in Bangalore? You were like 20 years ahead. So funnily enough, when I did Monkey Bar, which was India's first gastropub in a little garage space, I had to put all my life savings into that. And if this bombed, God help us. That's what we thought for the first week. And the menu was bizarre. The cocktail menu was bizarre. Nothing made sense, but everything made sense. And that's how I like to operate, is that everyone, when they tell me that this is a bad idea, I think it's a good one. Because if you don't try something different, why not? Aam panna as your main cocktail, you know, a menu that did not adhere to any convention, that just brought out these stuff that I like to eat, and just put it in this very egalitarian space. And I think we pretty much did. And what it then spurned across the country, there were gastropubs opening everywhere, the menu was being replicated everywhere. It was great. Same story was repeated with Fatty Bao. You know, Bao came into vogue, ramens came into vogue, and then further on with Toast and Tonic, which wasn't an idea that many people were behind. They're like, Manu, you must be mad, you're doing an only gin space. I said, chalega, trust me. They're like, how will you make gin sell? I was like, with tonic. If you got tonic, gin will sell. When we started the brunch, we were the first standalone restaurant in the city to have a brunch, and we had this wild brunch, you know, it was a celebration more than anything. Beautiful buffet. It was one of the prettiest buffets in the city. It was only Mediterranean. It didn't have Indian and Chinese and this. Extremely fresh, very boutique looking, small bowls, all mismatched crockery, and everyone would tell me, chocolate fountain nahi dala. I said, why would I put chocolate fountain? We have nice chocolate dessert. No, chocolate fountain is the in thing. I said, it may be, but I am not putting a bloody chocolate fountain, which is just basically like a air filter and purifier, taking up all the crap from the atmosphere and constantly churning it. I said, I'm not doing it. And of course, I had a lot of blowback on that, but I refused to do it. The term food superstars means people who can change the way we think of food and we consume food, but also people who essentially feed us. And that could be it just is a wide gamut. Chefs, of course, but everything down the chain that makes chefs a possibility are also food superstars. The farmer, the supplier, the purveyor, the people who aren't spoken about, the purchase manager, all of these guys. This is an industry with the highest attrition rate. It's ludicrous. Because we've not enabled and groomed talent, we just keep poaching from each other. And it's a very set industry norm that you want to open a restaurant, hey, uska decor copy kar le, uska menu copy kar le, uska chef utha le, apna product ready ho jayega. And that is how you make a restaurant. That's not how you make a restaurant. But that is how you make a restaurant, clearly. So I hope that changes also. I've always been a legacy guy. I think what I leave behind through my people is far more important than any kind of wealth or name that I generate. And I'm still young, so to have a legacy at that means that I have some way to go. So, I'm looking forward to that.